Ah, Ubisoft, the company that we all simultaneously love and hate at the same time. The company that gave us classics like this. And also the company that gave us, well, whatever these are supposed to be. Ubisoft is probably one of the most controversial game companies because every single one of their games causes divide among fan bases. And no, it's not EA because, well, we all know they just suck. But how Ubisoft had quote-unquote evolved over the past few years has been really interesting, and all of their popular series from just a decade ago look completely different today. And well, I'll be the one to say Ubisoft is clearly just evolving, but backwards. The intellects at the head of Ubisoft knew that it wasn't just enough for them to simplify and mainstream all of their series. Now they gotta go even more mainstream and focus on free-to-play games? Free-to-play games. Really, I cannot wait to play an Assassin's Creed Battle Royale with tons of skins and dances and microtransactions. But seriously, what in the world happened to Ubisoft? What caused them to throw away the diversity and uniqueness in their games? Cause now it feels like every single player series Ubisoft has is an open world RPG that all feel and play out very similar. Assassin's Creed is still the most obvious example of this. The AC series used to be very unique, very original in the video game industry. AC1 was really one of its kind when it came out in 2007, with an open world parkour game where you can jump across rooftops and experience historical moments in history. Now granted, this triggered a bunch of copies and a lot of companies took inspiration from Assassin's Creed 1, and for a long time Ubisoft continued to build upon and improve their original IP, which was a huge hit by the way. Assassin's Creed may not be as popular as it is now, but it was still one of the more well-known single-player series even 10 years ago. But then that all changed after Unity and Syndicate, and Ubisoft decided to hop on the open world RPG trend with Origins, and it worked. But then we got Odyssey and Valhalla, which are so far off from what Assassin's Creed used to be that many of us wonder if it can even be called Assassin's Creed anymore. Ubisoft abandoned and spit at the original Assassin's Creed and instead wanted to create something mainstream that would appeal to a broader audience where they could fill it with lots of pointless content to keep players playing, and so they can fill it with tons of microtransactions. And for some reason Ubisoft gets away with this. When it comes to many other games, having a large amount of microtransactions is an outrage, but for some reason it's okay for Ubisoft of all companies to get away with this, and that's just because they can. They've been so methodical and smart with how they get you to spend more money, and it's working. AC Valhalla has already made millions of dollars for Ubisoft on microtransactions alone. Assassin's Creed is almost completely unrecognizable from what it used to be, and you can even tell in the gameplay that Ubisoft really want to dumb it down and simplify it for a larger audience who haven't been exposed to Assassin's Creed before. And the most frustrating part about it all is that it's working, so they have absolutely no reason to stop. You think they care if fans like us complain that this isn't Assassin's Creed? They especially don't when we still continue to buy the new games. Ubisoft hasn't just done this to Assassin's Creed either though. The Far Cry series is another really good example. I think we can all agree Far Cry 3 and 4 were peak Far Cry, and then came Far Cry 5 and New Dawn, which I don't mind. They're not bad games, but they did the same thing they did for Assassin's Creed, just not as on a drastic scale. The new Far Cry games, especially New Dawn, have RPG mechanics and features like the star levels, the health bars, and all the colorful, ridiculous amounts of loot and customization. A series that used to have a large majority of its focus put into its narrative and characters has now become a first-person open-world RPG where story feels like the least important part. I mean, the main characters don't even talk anymore. Ghost Recon is another great example, and it received the same treatment as Assassin's Creed. What was once a series of linear, story-driven, tactical shooter games have become open-world looter shooters that once again, you guessed it, feature RPG mechanics and microtransactions. I hear a lot of companies saying these days that linear style, story-driven games are outdated and the open-world genre is the new trend, which is very clear when it seems like every new big game each year seems to be an open world, and I frankly think that's BS. It's been proven that linear games can still be successful today, and not every game has to be an open world RPG to sell. It is so apparent now that Ubisoft has no interest in creating unique games or continuing their creative series. I mean, if they did, we would have had another Splinter Cell by now, which I think is perfect evidence that they'd rather just follow the trend and be the mainstream company that gives us a bunch of open world, bloated RPG RPGs that all play out exactly the same. And if Splinter Cell does come back, how much are you willing to bet that it will come back in open world format? Watch Dogs Legion is probably the first Ubisoft game in a while that actually felt really unique and different, but even that game is so far off from what the original Watch Dogs was, and of course they still had to add microtransactions and RPG mechanics to the game. Every Ubisoft game is starting to look and feel the same, and each series is stripping what made that series fun and unique, and instead simplifying and bloating the games so they appeal to a more general audience, which equals more money for Ubisoft, so they can carry on their grand scheme to conquer the world. I'm telling you guys, it's real. It's not a joke. This isn't even a joke anymore. We're gonna die because of Ubisoft. Ubisoft still may not be EA levels of bad, thank the Lord, but it's certainly getting there and taking some very, very similar steps. I mean, Ubisoft even got Star Wars now, which will probably end up being another open world RPG, but with a Star Wars skin, because that's all Ubisoft is capable of making now. Even their new IPs are copies of what we've already gotten. Ubisoft was once one of my favorite game companies, but where they've been going and the direction they now plan to head, especially with free-to-play games, they are quickly losing my respect, and I've had enough of these mainstream, watered-down games that are shells of what they used to be. And since Ubisoft is making more profit now than ever, I expect the trend to continue and get worse. So if you were hoping for some kind of reform for Ubisoft games, you have another thing coming. The thing that sucks as well is that I feel I've put so much time and energy into a lot of these games and series that I have to keep playing the new games and hoping something will change. Assassin's Creed is my favorite video game series, and to see what's happened to it and what is most likely going to continue to happen is disappointing to say the least. But hey, at least Far Cry 6 looks promising, so hopefully we can at least get Far Cry back on track. But let me know in the comments what you guys think of Ubisoft's evolution and what you think about their current state and their plan for free-to-play games in the future. One like equals one more person standing up to Ubisoft. Please, we need all the help we can get if they're gonna conquer the world, I'm telling you. But anyways, if you enjoyed the video and want to see more like it, I'd appreciate it if you consider subscribing if you want. If not, that's no big deal. Anyways, thanks for watching and have a great day, everybody.